cover is that of what I'm calling abdominal strength versus core strength. Now, what I mean by the difference of these is abdominal strength is when people have got really strong abs and they do lots and lots and lots of crunches of one sort or another. Often those muscles are strong, but their ability to be able to support their entire core, having a really solid pelvis, is often quite poor. A really good example of that is people who spend a lot of time, I said, doing crunches, or in particular doing these highly hip flexor emphasized exercises, and then when they go to do some sort of pelvic stability test, they're very poor. And I have a client who just recently has had a lower back historically for a long period of time, spent huge amounts of time doing incline sit-ups with his feet underneath. Now, I've mentioned before that's just such a bad exercise, and I suggested to him that after seeing him be able to do hundreds and hundreds of these, that he should come and have his ab tested, just like the ab testing protocol we just went through. Now, what was amazing is that he struggled to get past level 2 or level 3. It was just that bad. The moment his legs moved, his pelvis rotated and he couldn't maintain the pressure. And that was because he'd been training the muscles in the wrong way. So again, having abdominal strength alone, it really isn't very useful. We need to develop good core strength, and that means all the muscles function as a big brace around this torso region to hold our pelvis stable whilst we do particular movements and activities. The last topic of this session is what I'm calling strength versus strength endurance for the core. Now, what I mean by that is that the core is seen as, or the core muscles are seen as postural muscles. And when someone says postural, they go, oh, well, these muscles need to be able to contract for long periods of time. So therefore, the best way of training those is to do lots and lots of repetitions in a training environment. Now, the problem with that is that the moment you start doing lots of some sort of exercise, and the repetition ranges in some cases are in the hundreds, that the core will fatigue fairly quickly, and what will happen, the hip flexors will come in and take over and do a large amount of that exercise. I gave the example in the last session talking about planking. Now, planking, if not done correctly, can be a huge hip flexor exercise. And the world record of over 10 hours, a huge amount of that would have been the hip flexors coming in, helping with the actual movement or holding that particular position for that length of time. So what I often suggest is that we should treat the core in two different ways. We should treat those muscles like any other muscle in the body. We should therefore load them up in an appropriate way. And in the next lesson, I'm going to take you through a whole range of exercises that are from unloaded to loaded. And what that's going to do is that's going to get the muscles strong, which is what we need to do. The second part of that then is that we then need to train those strong muscles to have strength endurance. And one of the great ways of doing that is by working on good posture at all times. Because again, as we talked about in the previous lesson, to have good posture, you have to have a small abdominal brace going on at all times. And so if you can work on your posture at all times, every time you're standing, think about good posture, thinking about abdominally bracing, what happens is you start to develop the appropriate strength endurance throughout your core to be able to hold these good positions for long periods of time. It gets very challenging when you're in a seated position, and so what I often tell people is sit in a good postured position when you're seated, and the moment you can't maintain that, stand up out of your chair, walk around for a few seconds, and then sit down and re-engage, rather than letting yourself get into some horrible position. So if we do that, then what happens is we start to treat the muscles like every other muscle when we're in the gym, and then when we're outside of the gym, in a really functional way, we work on the strength endurance component by keeping a good posture at all times.